Hi guys, this is Anna and here I'd like to talk to you about my plans for November 2017. Because I took such a long hiatus, I didn't do any reading. A lot of the books I'm going to be showing you today you have seen before or I have mentioned them before. I have missed Victoberfest, obviously, all the Victorian literature. I have missed Persephone September, second year in a row, and this November looks like non-fiction November. However, because my reading has been so all over the place, it's been really all over the place. There's only one way to describe it. I don't want to make a commitment and say I will sign up, just read non-fiction. It's not gonna work. I'm gonna read a collection of books, but there are a couple of non-fiction books which I will mention towards the end of the video, which I have started before and I would like to progress with, if not finish, or I have started and didn't talk to you about. So it's like one biography I have started very recently, which I guess classes non-fiction. Biography is a non-fiction. So yeah, without further ado, let me just bring the books. Right, so I'm gonna start with fiction and then show you the non-fiction which I have started and would like to finish. So, fiction-wise, there's a book you have seen since May on my channel. This is Amy Espes's Sufficient Grace. I'm still reading it, guys. Yes, I know, it's been a very long time, but I'm still trying to. I'm now on page 150 and I only started to like this book in the last 30 pages. It took me 122 pages to actually realize, there's something in there, I want to finish it. So I'm reading slowly. I'm reading about like 20 to 30 pages a day, just before I go to sleep. But I'm used to the language now. It doesn't jar with me. I actually enjoy the book. So definitely want to finish in November. The second book, I have started reading it in Russian. This is translated from Italian. This is Umberto Eco and he's In the Name of the Rose. And I have to say, I really dislike it in Russian. And I think a lot of it might be translation. So I've tried back in August, nothing. Early September, nothing. But I have now procured this in English as an audiobook. So I'm going to try it as an audiobook first. Let's see how that goes. But chances are it's just the Russian translation, because everyone else who's read it in English really liked it. So yeah, Umberto Eco. Right. Decameron was back in September. But I stopped reading in September, so I'm still on day one. It's going to be a slow read. It's not going to happen by the end of November. If I read half of it by the end of 2016, that would be a good start. But I do want to finish it, and I want to read it in this particular translation, because I have tried bits and bobs of it years ago in Russian, and I know that this translation is apparently superior to anything else written in English, so I'm going to stick to this. Another book I'm reading, which is fiction, it's the last fiction, which I have a physical copy of. I'm reading Andrei Bely, St. Petersburg. It has been translated into English, but I'm reading it in Russian, and I'm reading it in unadulterated Russian. So the book has been published prior to the language reform, which took place really early after the Soviets took over. So very early in the 20th century, they changed the Russian language a little bit. This edition was published in 1980, but it took the original text and it has a lot of commentary done by the author himself with regards to his text. So all of those are his own little explanations to the book. It's a slow read for me, and I think what I will do is I will finish reading Sufficient Grace, is my bedtime reading, and I'll swap to this. But yes, I'm enjoying this. Okay, finally the last book I'm reading as a fiction. I'm reading it electronically because it's difficult to get. So I got recommended this book by one of my Russian viewers. It's a Ukrainian author. The book is written in Ukrainian but has been translated into Russian. So I'm reading it as an electronic version. It's called Расколотое небо, or like the sliced sky. Like, you know when you have a thunder and the lightning just splits the sky? Literally, that would be a translation for that. So it's written by Ukrainian author. It's the first time I've read anything by her, Svetlana Talan. I don't think the book has been translated into English. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. And it deals with a really difficult period in Ukraine in the early 1930s, like 1929, all the way to sort of mid 1930s, where a lot of people in Ukraine have been put into kolkhozy, which is the same system they had in Russia. So it deals with a difficult, turbulent time, and people who had their own farms had to part with everything they had and join this collective farm, which obviously is not something they wanted to. And there was a famine, and then the war will start later in World War Two. But even before World War, like the period between World War One and World War Two, when you had the revolution, not every region of Russia gave up easily. Not everyone wanted to become Soviet. And those really rich agricultural regions in the south of Russia, and what is now Ukraine, like the borderlands between Ukraine and Russia now, where my family comes from our mother's side, a lot of people didn't want it. And there was a lot of partisan war, which took a lot of brutal force to stamp on. A lot of people ended up in the collective farms absolutely detesting them, and they had nothing to eat. I remember my grandmother telling the stories that as a child, like the closest she's been to actually seeing meat, because there was no meat, it was just starvation, was seeing trains loaded full of slaughtered cattle going to Moscow, because that was the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, that region. Everything, like honestly, you stick, you put a stick into the ground and it will grow into a tree, because the land is just so rich in minerals. So a lot of bread and other stuff grows there, all the vegetables. But people who used to grow it in this time, they didn't get to eat it. They didn't get to enjoy the fruits of the labor. That all shipped to other regions, which were more important to the new Soviet Union. So it's a lot of personal difficulty within families. So part of the family could decide to be political and join the new system. Part of the family was really against it. It's a very turbulent time in both Russian and Ukrainian history. I'm 10% into the book, so I would not want to say too much, but what transpires already is that it's quite ideologically driven from the new Ukrainian perspective. So there's a lot of negativity against Russia, like Ukrainians are so good and the Russians were really shit. Which I kind of can understand in a way, but in the same regard, my family comes from the Russian part. Well, some of my family is now Ukraine. A lot of my family comes from the region where Lvov is, which is now Ukraine, but used to be Poland. And they like used to be Poland when my family used to live there. And they were not treated any better, guys. They were treated just as bad. So we'll see. 10% in, we'll see where it leads me. Now, with regards to non-fiction. The first book you have seen several times on my channel. I have finally started it. This is Jeremy Paxman's A Life in Question. This is his autobiography. I love Jeremy Paxman. He is a very prominent journalist here in Britain. He's written several books, he's a historian, and he is the chair of the University Challenge, my favorite TV program. So yes, I purchased this when I went to the book festival back in the summer, so I have it signed by the author. Unfortunately, I missed his talk. And my plan was to read it over summer holidays, but I had no wish to read, so I'm picking it now. Another book you've seen before, it's The Art of Reading by Arthur Thomas Quiller Couch, which was a Cambridge literary professor who taught English literature, and those are his notes for the students, broke into 18 different chapters on how to read books. I'm absolutely in love with it. I'm done with the first of the lectures and I'm savoring it. I'm reading it really slowly. I can only say one thing. I would recommend everyone to read it. The edition I have is published by Scholar Select in America, because I wanted to have a hard copy, but you don't have to buy a book. This is available for free because United States government has decided, well, years ago, that this is a wonderful, very important contribution to literature. and it should be publicly available, so you can read it in a public domain. You don't have to purchase the book. And it's small and it's just full of surprises. This is beautiful, and if you are to read it, the reason why I have it on paper is because I realized just how tiny my knowledge of literature is, and I need a lot of space to do notes, and I have it next to my notebook because I don't want to mark too much. And I write an extensive list using this of the authors I'd like to read more of, particularly when it comes to Victorian literature or pre-Victorian English literature, because there are gaps. There are big gaps, and I want to, over my lifetime, to obviously get them smaller. Another book you have seen and I have not progressed with, this is Unbound. This is the history of Poland. I've been reading for several years, but I have restarted this year. I'm still stuck on page 228. It's a very difficult read. I got to the point when we deal with fascism and we start to deal with concentration camps. I'm not at Auschwitz yet, but I'm getting to that point, so I had to stop reading it because it was just so deeply upsetting. Like, compared to Archipelago Gulag by Solzhenitsyn, Archipelago Gulag was like a baby read. This is, because it's a proper non-fiction, this is an academic scholarly work. She doesn't really spare you any emotions. She just goes for the jugular, and this book is difficult. It's written by Halik Kaczynski, and she's a British historian of Polish descent, so she has lost a lot of family members during World War II, so it's a personal work for her, as well as main focus of her academic interest. So, lovely book, very difficult read. I don't think I will finish it this year, but if I can get another 150-200 pages this year, that would be good. And that leaves me with the last book I've been trying to read for a very long time. Well, there are two more non-fictions, but there is only one I'm really going to focus on, because you can't read everything. It's just not gonna happen. Let me find it. And the last book is called Historically Inevitable: Turning Points of the Russian Revolution. And it's not necessarily like one book. It's edited by Tony Brenton, but it's a collection of essays done by different professors whose main work focuses on Russian Revolution, or like late 19th century, early 20th century Russian history, and they all try to deal with just one particular event and see if the political figures at the time have chosen a different path, could have they avoided the entirety of the Russian Revolution. I'm starting on the 9th chapter, so each chapter is different author. I like it so far, so I'm 50% in, and I will really recommend it for those of you who are interested in Russian Revolution, but you don't know which authors to pick, because this gives you snippets of different writing styles. So by reading this, you can say, okay, I like the way this historian writes, I just find the language quite accessible, I can see we will get along, so we're probably gonna read it. Or you can say, okay, the history is there, it's good, but it's just like, I don't know, too academic or too dry or too emotional, it's not for me. From that point of view alone, this book is definitely worth a read. I know that most people were reading about Russian Revolution in October, but it passed me by, so I'm gonna try to catch up in November. So yeah, that's it guys, this is what I will try to read in the month of November. Don't think I will finish everything, so some of these books will spill now into December. My main objective for November is just to keep on reading and don't go back into the area, into that horrible headspace when I just don't read and get depressed. So yeah guys, see you in the next video. Happy reading. Bye.